Good morning, powerlifting. It is Monday, September 16th. I have emerged from my football coma. My Bears lost last night, but we are here to talk powerlifting with Brandon. What's up, Brandon?
What's going on? What's going on?
Yeah, real quick, guys. Exciting announcement. We have our own show page now. Listen for Commands on YouTube, and then we'll have our own Listen for Commands podcast page as well. So you guys can subscribe to all those. He's going to link it in the bio. And then you can link it in the bio of the podcast as well. So it'll all be there. I guess we're going to have to link people to that so they can resubscribe to the podcast. But anyway, good thing we did this now and didn't wait until a bunch of people were trying to listen and it was an issue. I already got texts about it last night because we took all the old stuff down. But we are back. We have a great show today. We're going to talk QTs in the USAPL. Gross. Nationals. Both the Nationals are going to be in the same venue, not at the same time, but in the same venue in Atlanta. And then we're going to talk about what if a powerlifting meet got ran in the Sphere, coming off the UFC doing that crazy thing they did with the Noche. We'll be talking about that, but we'll just jump right into it. So USAPL, oh, that's hilarious. Was your last meet USAPL?
It was, yeah.
That's tough. What do you do? You're switching, right?
Yeah, I switched because I was doing it for the collegiate division pretty much. And then as soon as I graduated, it was there's no real
That is their
reason.
only saving grace.
Mhm.
That's their only saving. Listen, if PA wasn't so, if you guys don't know, PA is like 2 employees, right? Running the whole thing. I've got more employees at my gym, and they're running the entire thing. If they had one person dedicated to the college level, the USAPL would be done, because that's the only thing saving the USAPL right now is that college level. And that's why their meets are as big as they are, because the biggest demographic of powerlifters is that collegiate junior level. Because how do you get into powerlifting? You're either an athlete who needs something to do after high school, or you're a little bit of a, powerlifting's a real black sheep sport. You're a little lost. You're maybe a band kid or something. You're a nerd, and you're like, oh, I'll just pick up this niche sport. And so that's the demographic that does powerlifting. And they actually do kind of have that, not captured, but they have that, because they have the collegiate level, they kind of have that kind of control over that for now. Because I promise you, if the PA decided tomorrow that they wanted to focus on the college level, it would be over. They're just lucky that there's only so many resources right now for that. So yeah, USAPL. Let's pull the lever in the time machine. Let's go back. So I'm convinced. I'm 100% convinced the people in charge of the USAPL are not on social media. 100% convinced, because they still think they're the dominant federation in the United States. And so by some metrics, and some very important metrics, they are. They generate the most revenue, which I think is the most important metric. They have the most members, which is, again, a very important metric. But they just don't have the brand they used to. And that may be the most important thing, because it's such a small sport that, on a whim, and it's such an easy sport for people to just flip the switch federations, switch comps, that they've just been able to just turn the page, basically. So I think they still think that athletes are going to fizzle out of powerlifting America and come back to the USAPL, and that, it's not out of the realm of possibility that could somehow happen, but it's very unlikely. It's not likely. That's going to happen. So like, I'm just convinced that they don't see that, they still just think, and I even heard, so I heard the president on a podcast basically say that what's going to happen is all these athletes are going to go over internationally. They're going to lose because the drug testing's not very good, and then they're going to come back. Well, we're kicking everyone's ass still. The Russians aren't here, so I think maybe that's what he's alluding to, that like the Russians are going to come back. They're all going to be doped up still, and then they're gonna somehow beat us, which still I don't think is the case. I only think there's like one Russian who would even be super competitive, and that's Sergey with Waskar. I don't know. The Russians have been gone for so long, but that was somehow the picture that was painted, that was going to happen. And I mean, that's still not going to give the USAPL its own version of Sheffield. So
Right.
anyway, on the topic at hand, they basically thought that they could make they thought that they could make nationals uber competitive by raising the QTs. Because Raw Nationals is not just open, it's teens and it's masters and it's everyone who's Raw, which actually I knew that, but it didn't, like, I think I forgot that that's how it works. Because I'm like, I was always like, wow, they have 1,000 open lifters. That's so many. And then I remember that it's really everyone. That's why it's such a big meet. And PA has actually thought about switching it to all Raw, which I think would be kind of cool. But then it also makes it a little less. I don't know. I think they should, because then we could just go with my idea where you put everything in prime time, top guys in prime time, and then you put everyone else everywhere else. I love that. Did you ever go to Raw Nats?
No, I wasn't good enough. Like,
That's why we're in media.
well, yeah, no, there was another thing. It was just like, I think right as soon as I was about like right teetering where I needed to be, they upped the QT, and then yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, but like in that case, if you had to make the QT, that was your goal to make the QT, you weren't going to be competitive anyway. So like that's how I've always felt, and like I'm not very good, and so I've always been kind of realistic with myself that like,
Right.
that if you're trying to hit a QT, you're not really going to be super competitive anyway. But yeah, anyway, back to that. They thought they would raise the QTs, and they raised them so high that only a handful of lifters would have been able to meet them. And so this was months and months ago. This was 6-7 months ago. And so since then, the Federation has absolutely gone off a cliff. It was going off a cliff before then, and then they decided to make this change. And so for some reason, they thought that basically what was happening was the top 3 or 4 lifters were going over to PA. And then the rest were going to stay in USAPL because of convenience or something like that. And what they didn't really, which is logical to me, is that I just assumed everyone else was going to follow. Basically, those first people had a path to Worlds and stuff. And then I assume that everyone's just going to keep following, because you don't want to be the national champion and then everyone laugh at you because the best lifters are somewhere else. Right? Like that's what people were doing this year. You're like, oh, I won a national championship. And it's like, everyone knows you didn't. So like, it's like a false thing. So like, could you imagine if so no one on the USAPL side would have won at Powerlifting American Nationals this year and won't win next year. And so let's say one of the classes did have a better total. That would really suck for that person, because you wouldn't be able to go to Worlds. No one would really give you the recognition, because you'd be like, oh, well, you didn't do it in PA. Come over to PA. Like that's what everyone would have been saying. So yeah, I that's really funny. But anyway, they raised them super, super high. And so they raised the QT is super, super high. And then it turns out that like only like a few people would have even made those QTs at this point. And so it would have been so few people that it would have been like a one platform thing. And so like everyone realized they did have to change the QTs, because if you can't qualify for nationals because the QTs are too high and Powerlifting America doesn't have a QT, you're just going to go to Powerlifting America, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that was kind of everyone else's logical conclusion. And so we do assume that most of the top people are moving over to Powerlifting America. There's no difference. There's no difference from Powerlifting America to USAPL, except for the fact that Powerlifting America has all the top talent and a path to the international level. Okay. So there's no difference right now. The drug testing thing is not a thing. It's not an issue. Okay. At Powerlifting America, all the winners get tested by WADA. Okay. And that's what matters, because those drug tests hold up in court. Those drug tests are real. That's what matters, because if you don't win at Powerlifting American Nationals, it doesn't really matter if you're sauced or whatever. It's irrelevant. And even if you were sauced, if you do win, you have to get tested, and then you're going to run into issues there. So drug testing is not an issue because they test the people that matter, right? The people that matter get tested. All the arguments about, oh, we got to test 10%, we got to test the teen threes, we're training down there. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, should we test more? Yeah. I mean, so like the NFL, all these, so basically the NFL's drug testing policy is the one I'm most familiar with. And so the reason I reference the NFL so much is because they are the best. They are the best business. They operate the best. They are just an absolute machine. Okay. I make a joke that every year people say we got a big NFL season coming up. Every single year for the past 20 years that I've been alive, we have a big NFL season coming up, and they deliver every single time. And so I'm like, that's who we want to emulate, right? And like, whether or not you want it to be, and we hit this debate with Mike Gold, whether or not you want it to be a team sport or you want it to be an individual sport, that's still up for debate. I'm willing to entertain that argument, but the way they operate and the way they market and the way they do business is what we want to emulate. Okay. You don't have to emulate the team aspect necessarily. I'm obviously pro team, but like, we do want to emulate how they do business, because how they do business is excellent. Okay. You want to do the best things. You want to, if you're a power lifter, you want to train like the best. You want to hire the best coaches, right? So you want to emulate the best sports, right? And so we can steal all this good stuff that they do. We can take a lot of that stuff. It's not against the rules, right? It is what we want to emulate. Whether or not you want to emulate the structure and the business structure, that's fine. But again, I reference the NFL because they do things right. But their drug testing policy is you can get tested up to 6 times a year, randomly, blood. You have to have your whereabouts. Like, they have a really good policy, and they work with drug-free sport, which is what all the professional sports use. They use that's kind of like it's a WADA competitor, actually. I actually think they're a little more lenient than WADA. I think that's why most professional sports use them, because I do think there's some pseudo stuff going on with the drug testing. But anyway, I would love to see that kind of a policy emulated, but it's super expensive. A WADA drug test is like $800. Like, and you have to travel. All these people like fly first class that come and travel and do the testing. And so that's a reason why, actually, we'll get to this later in the show, is we're going to be sharing the Expo Center in Atlanta with USAW at their Masters Nationals. So Powerlifting America and USAW both are under WADA, so they'll both be there. So that's kind of interesting. And we'll get to that. But again, the QTs, the drug testing, no one really cares about drug test. I mean, do you see a difference in drug testing?
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, like, the only reason as an athlete myself, like, I always say broad definition, but it's like almost a compliment if you get drug tested, because it implies that they think that you're on sauce or you're crazy. But I like, money wise, it just doesn't really make sense to test people that aren't winning, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm planning a money meet And I'm a little so like here's my hypothetical, because I'm gaming it out. I'm like, what if someone who's an untested lifter wants to jump into this meet, and they could potentially win because they have a good dots. Because like this money meet I'm playing is gonna have like a $10,000 like first prize. It's gonna be like super lucrative if like if it fills and stuff, because it's based on the number of entries. I'm like, what if someone does that and they don't get tested, and then we pay them out? Like, what happens then? So it is very interesting. And what I'd say to that is that's the federation's problem. That's really not my problem. So I'm not super concerned about it. I think and also like people can report people. Like if you think someone's a sauce, you can report people. So I think that would happen as well. If someone saw someone on the roster who was an untested person, I think that could definitely happen. I think it's also private business too. So I think I can refuse them as well, if they had a history of that. That's interesting. But moving on, continuing with they raised the QT super, super high. And then I immediately thought of the Natalie Portman meme where they write whore in lipstick on the mirror and they wipe it off. So I'm like, oh, meme time. So yeah. I was like, it's like they made a very clear mistake when they made it. People were saying exactly what happened when they did that. And so basically they were using math, and they assumed that all these people were going to stay, and that they wanted the meet to be like something. I heard someone say they wanted it to be like a 750 lifter meet. Like that was practical for them to like be able to serve with referees and stuff, because I know that could be an issue. So they thought, let's just keep it stable, 750. That's a good number, blah blah blah. And then what's really interesting is you have to, in order for you to hit a QT from here on out, it has to be at a state meet. And like, that's going to cause all kinds of like, the USAPL already has corruption and favoritism issues. That's going to cause all kinds of fucking problems, because what's the point of doing a local meet in the USAPL anymore? Like if you're trying to qualify, you're just going to go to that state meet or a regional meet. You're not going to do local meets anymore. It's just going to screw local directors, which I think is crazy. And like PA has the same kind of issue. So like the problem is PA, I think if you're a member-based organization and you want more people to buy memberships, and you want more meet directors to do meets so you could get more drug testing fees, you need to have, every lifter has to do a local meet every year. I don't care if you're Jesus Oliveras. Like, you need to do a local meet every year to qualify for nationals. It's only fair. The fact that you can qualify any total 2 years in the past is just ridiculous. It doesn't help anyone. Because like, here's what happened. So like, a lot of people came to my meets to qualify for nationals last year, and those same people aren't coming back this year because they don't have to. And it does me such a disservice as a local director. Now, obviously, we want, we do want to make these meets about local lifters and stuff, but like when people are mainly using them as qualifiers, it really does suck. So I'm creating some different. Obviously, that's why I'm trying to build this money meet and stuff. I'm creating some different things that'll hopefully make for bigger, better events. But yeah, so the USAPL really did that. People were all up in the comments. It was funny. My meet was funny. It was just like them just erasing what they did. Like, oh, oopsies. Which I applaud them for actually changing, because that would have been really disastrous had they not. That would have been really, really crazy. But yeah, and one thing I did want to touch on is the venue that Proxy American Nationals is in, and the venue that Raw National is the same. It's the Georgia Convention Center, which is a really nice venue. It's right outside the airport. So you literally walk, like get off the airport, like where you get dropped off. You go down an elevator and it's right there. It's beautiful. I've been to Atlanta several times. Atlanta is an excellent destination, and the reason why Power to America ended up going to Atlanta is because this partnership with one, they got a lot of money. I'm guessing from the CDB. That's usually the thing that determines where they go for an event is how much money the city is going to give them. And that goes for every sport. That goes. The UFC gets $100 million from Saudi Arabia to do events there. The city of Indianapolis gave WWE, I don't even know how much to do events there. Like they're making money to literally go there because of the hotels and the stuff. Because when you sell out an 80,000 seat stadium at $100 a hotel, that's $8 million, so like they can afford to give site fees and stuff. Obviously, Saudi Arabia is more about tourism and more about, whitewashing things after the past.
Right. That's a whole different story.
That's a whole different story. They have tons of money too. I mean, some people say like the 10 or 15 richest people in the world are really that family, but the wealth is split. Like you'll never know because they don't pay taxes. They don't do tax returns. There's no way to know.
Right. That's hilarious.
Yeah. I believe Australia gave the UFC a bunch of money to do a series of events there. It goes for everywhere. And listen, it's really a good deal for the city too. So like, for example, like Power to America ran Bench Press Worlds in Austin, and like they filled 4 hotels. Like that's good for the city. They filled 4 hotels. They rented a huge space and stuff. And hopefully we're going to be able to do more and more of that as the sport grows. Work with more cities. I mean, that's why powerlifting like goes to weird cities like Reno and Memphis. Like it's because we get deals, and like that's what you want. Because otherwise, guess who has to pay for it? You. You.
Yeah.
If you have to pay the extra, like the federations aren't set up to just lose money. Like they don't need to make money. They're nonprofits, but they're not set up to just lose money. Like everything you get comes from your dollars back. So anyway, they are consistently dropping the ball. Okay, so we obviously they're consistently dropping the ball. So, and they just continue to do it. So I had not a long conversation, but I had a medium conversation with someone who is now a member of the executive committee of USAPL. And listen, it's not that I play both sides, but I think it's the worst thing that could possibly happen for powerlifting is for the USAPL to fold and Powerlifting America to have no competition. Because Powerlifting America sometimes already doesn't do what's in their own best interest. So, like, I really hope that USAPL is vibrant and competitive. So Powerlifting America has to respond and be just as competitive. Because the problem right now is, I think a lot of people think that USAPL is just going to fold. And so Powerlifting America doesn't have to get any better. Powerlifting America doesn't have to do anything. They can just keep running these national meets. They don't have to really push everything up. And I think that's like not a good prospect for powerlifting. Obviously, my opinion is that the federations are really designed to promote the sport. They're really not designed to like build these like crazy things. And so that's why nothing crazy has ever been built, because even Sheffield like was built by SBD. It wasn't built by the federations. Just aren't set up. It's when 12 people compromise on a decision, which is how many people compromise the board, you end up with nothing, right? It's like Congress basically, which is fine as long as nothing gets fucked up. It's fine. It's like when people talk about how like when Congress is divided with 2 separate parties, like it's the economic prosperity is crazy, like historically. And so it's the same thing when they don't do anything and like everyone, like good directors like me and stuff, get to run around and do what we want. It's usually fine. But if you run into issues like the USAPL where they just want to play politics, then you run into other issues too. But I had a conversation with someone on the executive committee, and I was like, hey, these are what I think your issues are. Like, you should address them. And it's like, listen, you don't have to listen to me, but like, I'm literally giving you a playbook.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm telling you, these are the things you should do. And I don't think they're like insane ideas. I think there are 2 issues. I think there are 2 main issues, and they affect different people. It's like it's like one of the, it's like a domino. So I think if either of these issues are taken care of, every other issue kind of falls into place. So these apply to every federation. As long as the federation handles these two things, they're fine. Number one is you have to have every powerlifting federation needs their own version of Sheffield. Right? Everyone agrees that Sheffield's the best powerlifting meet ever. So you need your own version of it, because that's what people start their journey to get to that. And what you want to do is you want to, I think, if USAPL and Powerlifting America both have their version of Sheffield, then basically what happens is, for the professional athletes, it becomes a competition of who can do the better money meet, right? And that's really cool. I think that's really cool. So like what I've said before is USAPL should do this. What they should do is they should do it a little differently. So Sheffield really rewards, Sheffield has some parity because of the world records. What they should do is, instead of world record based, USAPL should do a dots based meet and do the top 5 by dots, make some money. And then what I would do is I would make it gender neutral, and then I would put $100,000 up top. USAPL's got that kind of coin. They'd be fine. I would do $100,000, $50,000, $25,000. And you're telling me not one of those athletes are going to switch? Someone said that none of the athletes would switch if USAPL did that. I'm like, you kidding me? None of them. I'm like, I go through the list. I'm like, you're telling me Bob wouldn't, like, maybe, like, I don't know any of these people personally. I'm just using Bob as an example. Like, you're telling me Bob Matthews would rather go and compete to win maybe $50,000 in the most competitive field, or actually Amanda Lawrence is the best example. So Amanda Lawrence has a really hard time winning Sheffield. It's very, very difficult for her. Very difficult, because the way the world record is and where she's at. But her GL and her dots is like incredible. So someone like Amanda Lawrence might switch over back to win $100,000 there. Like, they're real, like, the incentives, or people are just going to go where the incentives best align for them. And what that would do is, okay, Amanda moves over, maybe someone else moves over. And like, because they don't want to let her just win the $100,000, someone else maybe wants to be more competitive. So I think that's what I would do. I would invest that money. And then what I would do is I would rent a theater. Theater rentals, like, depending on the theater, like between, like I said, $5,000 and $20,000. I'd rent something really not like something like not too big, like affordable. And I would do a big fan expo, and I'd try to get all these athletes over. I'd pay for their travel. Like, if you're the top 12, I'd pay for your travel. Do a local meet in the morning to kind of cover some of those costs. But yeah, like, you could really do something really nice if you want. If you want to do something really nice, you can. But anyway, that's the number one thing. You need some sort of path. You need something. The second thing is you have to end the local director monopoly. I talk about this with people in PA every single chance I get, because I think it is the most important thing, not only for the success of powerlifting America, but for the success of powerlifting a whole. I'll give you, so basically, I'll give a little context and I'll give some examples. So basically, right now, how it works in Powerlifting America is, if I want to run a meet, I apply for a sanction. I'm already a qualified director, so it's pretty easy for me. And then I get my meet on the schedule, I promote it, I run it, great. And then what happens is lifters get to choose between coming to my meets or going to someone else's. And that's very, very important, because if I do a bad job, guess what they get to do? Go down the street. They can go to the next competitor, right? It's great, because then if they're going to the competitor, I got to do things. I got to evolve. I got to change things up. I got to do better. I got to provide better this and that. I got to provide a lower cost. I got to do all these things. Right now in the USAPL, they have this policy, which I think has a good heart, which I think like comes from a good place, but actually works really, really poorly in practice. So basically what they say is they go, hey, we don't want meets to be too close to each other, right? Because the meets are too close to each other, they're going to cannibalize each other. So we want to protect our meet directors. And so what that does is if you're a meet director and you have a sanction, you can charge whatever you want for that meet because there's no competition. You can not have to improve your product. You can charge spectators a ridiculous amount, like if you want. And so there's no competition, so nothing is going to drive prices down. No one's going to be more efficient because of that. And so it's really important that every federation, if you want to be successful, if you don't, that's fine. Every federation needs to adopt this policy. Because I heard that basically the WRPF, and I'll rat a little. So basically, the WRPF, back when it was the WRPF, there's a guy running meets in Vegas. Okay. And he told people in Reno, Nevada, that they couldn't run WRPF meets because it was too close. Do you know how many hours Reno is away from Vegas in a car? Yes.
1?
6.
Oh man.
6 hours away. He's like, yeah, you can't run meets if you're 6 hours away. And so it's like, because he had political connections, and he was like, yeah, no, you can't run WRPF there. And so, and like coincidentally, these are the people who moved over to Powerlifting United now. And so like you act like, how are you gonna, like, these are the people, so those people who were doing that are the same people. So they're gonna run into the same problems. If you're just playing politics with the sanctions, the sport can't grow, because what people don't realize is like the sport grows by getting more people interested. The best way to get people more interested is to have more content. And content doesn't have to be a big money meet. Content is, hey, I mean, do you know how many people at MPG got into powerlifting because they showed up at MPG? I mean, like 20 kids have gotten into powerlifting because they came to MPG. It's completely changed the trajectory of their training because they showed up at MPG. So really, if you want to grow the sport, you need more gyms,
Right.
more powerlifting gyms, which is you know, that's up to like us. Like the feds can't really do anything about that. That's up to like me as an entrepreneur building more gyms. And a lot of people are building gyms. I've seen a lot of people building these powerlifting gyms. Obviously, I think the future is hybrid gyms. So you have one piece of real estate, you have a powerlifting section, you have a bodybuilding section, and then like people can go back and forth. Like that's the future. Like having straight up powerlifting gyms, that's over. That you can't be successful doing that. I can't even think of an example of
Yeah,
just
no.
a powerlifting gym. Yeah, no, like not that successful. You have to have the accessory equipment if you want to charge enough and have be on the right kind of path, for sure.
There's definitely gyms that structure their like investments based on equipment, like on powerlifting as opposed to bodybuilding and whatnot. And they'll just have like a few
Yeah, I mean,
trinkets
I
for
don't.
accessories.
Yeah, I mean, I don't invest. So there's money that comes in from the gym, and there's money that comes in from the meets. And so I don't invest any of the money that comes in from the gym in the powerlifting equipment because I wouldn't make it a return on investment. There's only the powerlifters make up a small percentage of the actual total membership. So I can't invest a ton. But the reason we have so much powerlifting equipment is because of the meets and the events. And I can put, and it takes some square footage. So I put them, you know, in their spaces and stuff, and it turns out pretty well. But yeah, that's definitely what will grow the sport is getting more people. Like obviously, I think you need to have a professional product for people to watch. That'll be the easiest way because there's infinitely more people who watch sports than actually want to participate in them. So viewership is probably the most important thing. But yeah, speaking of viewership, actually, maybe I want to wrap up this topic about. Oh, we were talking about the two things they can do is don't play politics with the sanctions. Let directors do what they want to do. We will develop better products for you. We're the franchisees of the sport. Take care of the directors. We'll take care of you. Let us do what we want. Get out of our way. Do and uphold standards. I think federations could do a better job of forcing meet directors to do the right thing. I think like feds shouldn't get involved in what meet directors charge, but they should get involved in the number of bathrooms per lifter, the number of parking spaces per lifter, the venues, air conditioning. Like you can't run a summer meet without air conditioning. Like that shouldn't be allowed. That's crazy. Certain standards I think should be upheld a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Every meet should have a live stream. Like I think that's kind of how easy I found it is to run a live stream. Everyone, I mean, the feds should just put together a kit. It should be a free live stream kit. Like there's no reason you can do different levels. Like level 1 is I literally could flip this webcam around and I could run a live stream like in OBS easy. Like you don't have to be tech savvy to do that. Or you could set up a multicam thing with a switcher and like you can do that too. Like you have options.
Right.
So I think that kind of stuff could happen as well. But yeah, those two things. I had the conversation with the guy on the executive committee, and he seemed to think the issue with the USAPL was communication. And like that's just like it's like sorry, it's like talking to a woman, and they're like, our communication is bad. And it's like, no, you're cheating on me. No, you're treating us like shit. We're not sorry, it has nothing to do with being a woman or anything. It's like being in a relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
You're in a relationship and you're doing nothing like to make the relationship better. And then you're saying that we can make the relationship better if we communicate, if we just talked more. Right. And it's like talk is like you great. Oh, we're gonna talk about all like I get like listen, I accuse myself of talking too much and not doing enough in like every aspect. Because I'm an ideas person. I like to think of big ideas, right? And so you have to think of big ideas before you do them, obviously. But then like execution is the hardest and the most important part. And and other people have accused me of that too. And it's like, well, I mean, I already do the gym. Like I've already done one big idea. You know, I have to, you know, the Pro Duel's only been around for a year. Like the UFC's been around for 20 years, by the way. And we're about to talk about the UFC shortly. So like I have some time to like figure things out. I really do. And we've already made some really great steps. But the UFC went to the Sphere this weekend. And one of my visions and my goals, the Sphere is awesome. For those of you who don't know, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. A powerlifting meet in the Sphere would be the most insane thing ever.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to know that I wasn't the only one that thought about powerlifting when I saw that venue.
It's really a perfect venue for it. The seating, the way the seating bowl is, the visuals, the lights, the location. Everything is so perfect to run an event. And when I saw what the UFC did, I was like, oh my God. Like the scale of it, the platform, the crowd, the audience, like all of that, you could run a powerlifting meet. Here's the problem. It cost him $20 million. Now, people go, powerlifting could never do that, blah, 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 blah. They made $2.2 million on tickets. They made $200,000 on tickets. That doesn't include the pay-per-view buy. Pay-per-view buy was probably huge as well. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we will see a powerlifting meet in the Sphere. Because what I think can happen is I think the UFC was so successful, they can't do that all the time, right? They can't do that every weekend. But if you could, I think people, like I had FOMO. I should have gone. I had tickets in my cart, like ready to go. They really weren't even that expensive. They were a couple $100. And I'm like, I gotta go. And for some reason I didn't. I don't know, maybe it's football season. I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed the opportunity, like as a sports fan of the lifetime to see in person. And I'm really disappointed in that. Like, cause like, I don't think there's ever going to be, even if they do another one, I don't think it's going to be like that. And if it is, it's going to be 10 times more expensive because everyone's going to want to go. And so if you could fill that niche where you're running a powerlifting meet in that venue and you get some investors to come along with you, because I think there's going to be a big return on it, because I think people want that experience. They want to see a sport in that kind of a venue. I think it's something you could sell for sure. If you partnered with MSG owns the Sphere, Madison Square Garden, like you could partner with them. You could develop an event. I think they want events there for sure. I think that brought so much publicity to the Sphere itself, which is like crazy that the Sphere needed more publicity.
Yeah, no,
But
I mean, in all fairness, I'll play devil's advocate here. I didn't know that it was a venue. It was the first time I saw it.
no,
So
and that like that's hilarious. Like that's good too. Like they did as much good for the Sphere as the Sphere did for the UFC, and the Sphere will get cheaper to rent as it goes. It won't be so much of a fad anymore. The reason I think the cost got out of hand is I think he uncorked the checkbook for sure, and he was hiring all the best people to do stuff, and that obviously adds to the cost. I think you could do something cheaper for sure. I think now that they know how to do it, they could probably do it better. You could always use all those same people too who did the first one. You could partner with the UFC. You could be like, hey, you guys did this. Like, can you help us? Like, we want to run one here. Help us out. Let us use some of your people. Blah blah blah. There's definitely. I mean, Endeavor is a sports company. Like, it literally is. Like, it's the UFC and the WWE. It's both. So, they are an entertainment company. Like, there would be no one more ideal to work with. It's definitely not. I mean, it's something that had we taken a different path as a sport sooner, it could be much more achievable. The issue right now is like the UFC has structure. The powerlifting has very little. It has new structure, but has very little structure. You know, we have somewhat of a path, but like we've talked about on the show numerous times, it's a stupid path, because if you're running events that lose money, you can't grow. Okay.
can't
Okay.
make
So
them better, can't run more events, can't do
no, right.
anything.
You can't do anything, because if you operate events at a loss, you have to bring in extra capital to cover that loss from somewhere. When you run events if you run events break even, then you can, if something goes wrong, you can't run an event that last year. So like things go wrong in business, shocker. But if you make a profit, you can take that profit, you can spend on more advertising, you can make the product better, you can do different things. Profit is essential for growth. You want the sport to grow, it has to be profitable. And I know that's a dirty word, because like powerlifting is like somewhat of a pseudo communistic sport sometimes. I don't know, is that our Russian origins? Do you feel that? I feel like sometimes I'm like, this is like I'm afraid to talk about this stuff, because everyone just wants to like cuddle each other, and like it's not about money, it's about the sport, it's the love of the sport. Oh, I feel so good about it. It's like,
It's
oh
never
gosh, it's like not how the real world works. Like, everyone should help each other. You should volunteer at my meet for free. I'm like, fuck off. Like, I pay everyone. I like people have tried to volunteer at my meets. I'm like, fuck off. That's not how this works. If I was doing a charity event, fine. None of my events are for charity. Let's just be clear. Like, I'm trying to make money. And how I try to make money is develop really, really great products that people want to buy. Like, that's the goal. That's the objective. So I'm a hopeful that. But a pod for me in the Sphere would be electric. Like, every lifter's country of origin, you have a video in the background, and
oh, yeah.
between lifts, you could put on a show in the Sphere for the 20 minutes between the lifters. Yeah, I mean, that should be on every single powerlifting visionaries whiteboard should be meet in the Sphere. And it's so
Right.
funny. So that was on my goal sheet before I found out the UFC was going there. I'm like, oh, we got to do a meet there for sure. Because I saw concerts there. I'm like, concert, meet, same structure, done. But you put the warm up room out where everyone can see it in the
Mhm.
Sphere. Oh, I have to do it. I have to do it. It's been on my vision board for a while. Like a meet at the Sphere would be insane. Um, it's like, so here, how do we get there?
It's the new
So,
thing to aspire to. It's like the top of the top, pretty much.
yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things like, are there enough fans of the sport to like get people to go? And that's where I think it's unique because we could get people that aren't fans of the sport to just show up at something like that. Like
Right.
if we just advertise it on the Sphere website, like would enough people show up?
Mhm.
Like, is it something that we could form a partnership with someone to do? Like that's kind of where I think it's like there's got to be someone who's interested in that. Like I like at MSG, they own the Knicks, like they own sports teams, like they do this stuff. So I think people need to be a little more creative, and I think there's some opportunities that we haven't really um
Explored yet.
taken, yeah, explored or taken advantage of yet. Um, so I'm really hopeful we can. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take athletes. Like I said, like athletes, any athletes listening to this, you have to compete more often.
Hmm.
You have to. You can. We cannot grow the sport if you want to compete twice a year. Okay. I know Powerlifting America decided to give you the green light to like skip Powerlifting American Nationals. Don't show up, take your SBD day, win a national championship. Do not skip it. Do not. Okay. It's essential for, okay, you are, if you hit a total at Sheffield and then don't want to do Powerlifting American Nationals, you don't have to go all out, but do not skip it. Show up, hit your SBD day, talk to the fans, see the fans. Skipping it is, the sport is not big enough for you to do that. You can't skip training camp. Okay. The sport is
Hmm.
too small for you to do that. Okay. If you care about the sport, listen, if you're saying, hey, it's in my best interest to skip this, I respect that. Like that's
Right.
fine. But don't say you care about the growth of the sport. Like don't advocate for that anymore. Okay. You're advocating for your own interest. And that's
And
fine.
I haven't heard a single person who doesn't like view it like that. I feel like every single person in the powerlifting space has the same goal, and it's to grow the sport.
Yeah, but yes, because it's easy to say I want the sport to grow. It's easy. Like, of course you do. Of course, I want my business to grow. But you know what I have to do to grow my business? I have to work and I have to do things I don't like to do a lot of times.
Hmm.
And so, like you're gonna have to do things you don't want to do, like in order for the sport to grow. And so, like I said, I encourage everyone to like take an internal inventory. Oh, I'm not going to show up to Pop the American Nationals. Like, I'm not going to compete and I'm not going to show out. It's like then just say your personal, and like listen, it's kind of stupid for me to ask for anyone to put aside their personal interest for the greater good, but like we're too small of a sport for you not to. Like if like something could happen in training, that's what I'm saying. Don't take your tens, show up, have a training day or whatever, show up, say hi, like be part of the event, and then you can move on from there. But like you have to at least show up. You
That
can't
that
not
that makes me like want to take it a like slight turn or kind of give my perspective on it because I feel like one weird thing about powerlifting is that a lot of the athletes are kind of like antisocial, like me. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of incentive there to like go out and network and like say hi to people that like follow you and all that if you're like a bigger lifter, if you're, more prolific. But I feel like a lot of them are probably like recluses in a little bit of a sense.
maybe. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to go through the weight classes. I don't think so. I think everyone's kind of. I mean, like Waskar.
Extroverted.
I'm no is actually I'm Waskar. Let's start at the bottom here. Waskar's out there.
Mhm.
Waskar actually. So I had my Pro Duel set up at Nationals. Waskar came up to me. He goes, "Dude, I love what you're doing. I love this is great." Like, and I'm like, "Oh, like I didn't know he followed it." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." Like, I'm
Mhm.
trying, I'm trying. Let's see. Waskar is 59, 66. Austin. and Austin's pretty outgoing. I talk to Austin a good bit. Austin Nikolai, that is.
Mhm.
Never talked to Jonathan Garcia. I've never talked to any of the other lifters. 74 Perk is super outgoing. I talk to Perk at every national. Um, and then 83 Ross. I mean, Angelo's pretty outgoing. Noriega's outgoing. That's like the star class. 93 Petrie. I've talked to Petrie. He's pretty he's well spoken. I don't know if he's super out. He's not out there. Like he's not doing crazy content or anything.
Mhm.
Ashton's pretty sociable. Bob, of course, does his crazy like videos and stuff. Like Bob's pretty crazy. Big Deb does good stuff. Like everyone's on social media. Jesus is doing stuff. Like
Yeah,
uh
no, that's just been my experience. I wasn't like, gonna die on that hill or anything, but
yeah, I don't really think so. Trying to think the women's side. No, like everyone does social media stuff now. Like everyone. I'm trying to think of anyone.
well, maybe just like in contrast with like other sports, because I don't know, like I guess there are kind of like football players that kind of keep to themselves and don't really do media stuff, but it's like you're kind of forced to when you do football. So
Yeah, it's part of your
it's
contract. Like it's part of your contract. Like, yeah.
yeah, so that might be a different circumstance, but still.
Yeah. Well, this is a good show. Like I said, we're on our own network. I'm going to wrap things up here. I think I talked about everything I want to talk about.
Mhm.
We're back on Thursday. I'll try and get a guest. If not, we'll talk about whatever other drama is going on. Um,
Yes, sir.
but anyway, this was Listen for Commands. I'm
Super
Spencer.
exciting stuff.
That's Brendan. We will see you on Thursday or Friday when it uploads.
Yep. See you
Like, follow,
guys.
subscribe, share the show. See you.